Hello, welcome back. We are here with the Pocono Liars Club, and today we have an interesting chat. We have two guests who are both actor-writers, and we're going to talk about presentation because you can write the best story in the world, but you still got to sell it to agents, to the public, to editors, and you can't just be the reclusive writer sitting back. So let's start by having everyone introduce themselves. Keith, you can go first.
Hello, my name is Keith Strunk. I am, yes, an actor who writes. I've known Michael for a long time, actually. We met many years ago down in Doylestown. I'm part of the Liars Club, the original Liars Club, one of the founding members of the Liars Club, and also the producer and one of the co-hosts of the Liars Club Oddcast, which is now in its finishing up its 4th year in December. 200 shows coming up soon. I've written a lot of scripts, a whole lot of scripts in my career. I've done theater and I've done stage. I've done in front of the camera, that sort of thing. A lot of work in corporate America, where that sort of morphed into me writing the scripts as well. So that's where my script writing really took off. I've won a couple of awards for those scripts, which that and a couple of bucks get you a cup of coffee, you know. But the point is, I've written a lot of those. So a couple of history books with Arcadia Publishing a couple of years ago, and now I'm currently querying a sort of a detective novel meets Shakespeare for middle grade. It's Dashiell Hamlet, and it's being queried right now, even as we speak. So it's been out. I've got a couple of requests for manuscripts already. So keep your fingers crossed.
Teel, say hi.
Hello all. I'm Teel James Glenn. Everybody calls me TJ, but I use the full name for branding. I'm a New York-based actor, stuntman, fight choreographer who writes because, you know, got to do something when you're laying there with a cast on you. And I have short stories everywhere. I have stuff out in Mystery Weekly currently, and a bunch of novels out. Did a lot of the soap operas in New York, pretty much every soap opera going back to Ryan's Hope. In one point or another, somebody from one of the soaps punched me. And I used to double ace on One Life to Live. 60 Ren fairs and just about everything. And it all goes into the stories. I've actually written a murder mystery that takes place at a Ren fair, Murder Most Fair, which is now out of print, but I'll find a new home. And that kind of stuff. So a little bit of everything, and it all goes onto the page.
The topic for today is facing the public, because we need to talk about how to get that courage up to just talk to people to begin with about your book. We're going to go into a little more detail about speaking in public, about the elevator pitch, and about how to sell it to both the public and the agents and such. But let's just talk about how to get over that first hurdle, because many people have a fear of speaking in public or just coming forward and starting a conversation with somebody. If you're at a bar, you know, and you're at a convention and there's an agent there, you want to say hi to him. Getting over that first hurdle is the hardest part. How do you do that?
I'm pretty much terrified of strangers. Even the is coming in with this. I know that I can't hide. I'm a large person. So when I enter a room, people notice me. And I had to deal with that. As a younger person, I was self-conscious about it. Now I've learned to use it. And so I try to be interesting. I try to, you know, walk up to people. If I believe in my material, this is the one thing somebody once pressed to me. If you believe in your material, then you owe it to your fictional characters to create a character of an author, to help them meet these people you're talking to in a bar. If I believe in my fantasy stories, I need to be brave enough to say, I have a fantasy story you should read. Not necessarily that forward, but I really do have to put on a persona, because I'm terrified. You know, at every convention, I have to have a place to go and detox, and because I cannot.
So you role play the author, basically. You
Yes.
say, now I'm going to pretend that I am the author and I have a different character.
Yeah,
that's how you get
absolutely. I literally put on author TJ Glenn because I'm mostly a hermit. So it's something I have to be self-conscious about. So I create who I am. I prepare to be the guy who can say hello to strangers and not freak out.
Keith?
There's some when I'm listening to what Teal's saying in terms of the putting on a persona type of thing, the thing to recognize, and we'll go into this a little bit. Teal and I were actually talking about this before. Uh, what fascinating lives we lead, that this is what we were discussing, but never mind, that's another story. Jeez. So the fact of the matter is, if you overlay something that's not you, right? Yes, the persona you put out there is a branded sort of, it's the public you, but if it's not connected to some genuine piece of you and it's not some genuine connector, the falseness of it's going to come through. Because take it from an actor, creating a character that's a real deal is not an easy thing to do if it's not you, right? You can do it, but that's what we're trained to do, and it's hard to do. I want to go back though real quick to because I think we'll talk a little bit more about that, because that's branding and it's an important thing to understand. I want to jump back to the idea of being that sort of fear factor, if you will, walking on stage. Because if you think about any kind of situation where you're presenting, be it to an agent, to a group of people, to a room full of people, to a Zoom meeting, to a Zoom webinar, whatever the case may be, there's always the trepidation and the fear that comes in as you move into it. All right. The only difference is that it manifests itself different for different people. Right. And so the key here to remember is, how does it manifest for you? Right. It's never going to go away. If you think there's some magic pill you can take, or something that I can tell you, or Teel can tell you, or Michael, anybody that says, oh, we train public speaking, can tell you that's going to make it go away, it's a lie. It doesn't go away. I'm more comfortable on stage in front of 1,000 people than I am sometimes in a one-to-one conversation. I am perfectly comfortable on stage. It's my natural happy place. And I get nervous before I go talk to somebody. I get nervous before this. I get nervous before going on. So how does that manifest itself? Physically, what happens to you? How do you recognize it? How do you go past it? How do you get past it? How do you embrace that and then move into what you're going to do? The Helen Hayes story that Teel was telling earlier is a tremendous one, right?
I was saying Helen Hayes, great actress, long career. Every single night before she went on stage, would be so nervous she would vomit. She would do it once, right, and go on stage and be perfectly calm for the rest of the night. But every single time, because
you're not advising people to do that necessarily.
No. Although I do have the feather consortium as you're leaving. No, but the fact is that she found that one single release what worked for her, and so she never tried to change it.
And that's the point. She understood it, right? She
Yeah.
understood. That's understanding your physicality.
Everyone has a ritual that they do that calms themselves. I know before I would go on stage, I would read something that had nothing to do with the show. I'd read a comic book. I would read an article in a magazine, so my mind was nowhere about thinking about the show. Also, I had the advantage of needing contact lenses, so I would not put my contact lenses in because I could see to the end of a quarterstaff. Past that, it gets blurry. That's all I need to be on stage. I don't have to see the faces of the people in the audience.
Right. See, and here's the opposite thing. I love seeing the people in the audience. See, for me, that actually calms me down.
Well, so as a storyteller, yes, it does. Yeah. But when I'm playing a role, I want to be in that bubble.
Well, yeah, a role is a different thing. But
yeah, if I'm doing public speaking, absolutely, I prefer to walk through the audience.
Exactly, because public speaking, I think this is an important distinction. Public speaking is not like playing a role as an actor. It is not. Playing a role as an actor, I'm creating something that is not real. I'm creating something that's part of a larger story, and it's in service to the story. And any connection you have to my character or to me comes vicariously through the story, not directly through me. I don't connect to you that way. The key to public speaking is the main part of it is not being a perfect speaker, is not being a perfect, you never skip a beat, you don't make any mistakes, none of that. It's connecting.
Yes.
Connecting to each and every one of those people out there. And that is why the Helen Hayes story is so neat, because she knew that in order to do that, she figured out that I throw up.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's understanding your physicality. Maybe you breathe. I breathe.
Yeah, I also do.
You know,
I do
I
a
do
Tai
the
Chi
breathing thing.
form as well, just
Right. So there you go.
to chill me out. But we were saying before about more comfortable in front of a crowd because you perceive it as a friendly thing. An individual or a group of editors that you might approach at a panel, the concept that you create the author character, but that character has to come from you. So it is not separate from you, but it allows you to be a little distant as the person from the author. The author has to serve, in this case, the story, to sell the story, to sell the fact that you can be responsible enough to deliver something on time, that you can listen to instructions. All of that is the author. The writer is the person who sits in a room and screams because they can't figure out the right word for doorknob.
Well, and
Well,
you're talking about an industry much like, you know, you and I have had a similar path, which is we started out doing acting, which questionable in terms of making a living, and then we decided, I know, here's a great idea. Let's be an author.
which is
Yes,
also
oh, make
questionable.
so much more.
Right. So, you know, how crazy is that?
Any
It's
creative
just
field. I
nuts.
mean,
But
actors, musicians, you know,
right,
writers, any creative field, there's only a small percentage that can make a good living at it.
right.
I
And
used to
there's
say that
two pieces
I
to
was
it,
in all three unions. I could be unemployed at three unions at exactly the same
and
moment.
that's really unemployed.
Yes.
But the point is, there's and with writing, with acting, with all of it, there's a art side and a business side. You know, and it's a craft, right? So the craft is in service to the art, but the business side is equally as important. And I think what you're saying, Teel, and I think again, I get a little nervous when we talk about putting on something. But when I hear you refer to the author, what I'm hearing, at least for me, that makes it comfortable for my ear, is I'm hearing, okay, when they meet Keith Strunk, the author, they're meeting Keith Strunk, the stable business person that understands how to work, that understands how to make deadlines, as you point out, that is easy to talk to, that can get in front of a crowd of people, can do all these different things, and not the guy that's pulling his hair out writing the book. That guy,
Yes,
they're never going to meet,
yes,
right?
exactly. That
And I think that's
my artist is in my little space. I know it's bigger on the outside, but when I leave this space to go to a convention or when I go on this, I'm together. Because otherwise my art isn't served. This is part of the experience of the art, is to find a way for the art to get to people. If I could not speak, I could not tell you things. And so if I cannot present my words,
right.
I'm failing. So
Let's try to
it's
narrow
a very
this
hard
down a bit
balance.
for,
Yeah.
for those of us who are beginning writers who don't have that kind of same experience. And we're trying to get in the door. So we're at a convention and we want to talk to an editor or two different examples. One, you're trying to talk to an editor or somebody to get them interested in your work, an agent. The other is how to talk to a reader. You're sitting at a book signing table and someone comes by and you've got to grab their attention in 2 seconds. So those are two different skills, I would think, and two different ways to attach it. But how do you get over that first hump? What do you say?
I think I think you want to pull back from both those situations, both the things you're talking. If you're at a convention, if you're at a con, and you're there doing, you guys hear Laura in the background?
Yeah, a little
Yeah.
bit.
A little.
Sorry, the cat popped the door open, so that's why. She's literally, what's happening right now, she's directing a play on Zoom for DeSales University while I'm doing this over here in the
Awesome.
same small house. So if it's too difficult, I'll mute and close the door. So
No,
please
it's not
tell me.
that bad. Don't worry.
So the key here is to think about what the objective is. All right. What is it you're trying to do in these situations? So if you first look at the objective of trying to interact with an editor or an agent regarding your book. All right. So let's peel back to the thing that everybody worries about when you go to this thing. What's my pitch going to be? Right. Talk about a pitch. So right out of the gate, I have a problem with that concept. I do. This idea that I'm going to pitch. Because think about what a pitch is. A pitch is, and especially an elevator pitch, which I despise, right? I got you in an elevator. I got your butt trapped in an elevator. And here's what I'm going to do to you. I'm going to throw something at you. And I'm going to throw so much stuff at you. Hopefully some of it'll stick. It's not what a pitch is. The objective of a pitch is to create a dialogue, is to create interest, right? Is to have them ask a question. You want them to lean in and ask a question. So when you think about a reader, it's a similar objective. You want to create interest. How do you do that? You do that by seeing who's in front of you. You know, with a reader, I would say, what else have you read? What did you like about my book? Why are you here? I love your shirt. Whatever. To open the conversation, to start a dialogue. With an editor, that is the pitch thing. You do the pitch, but people talk about doing a 5-minute pitch. They think that they got to talk for 4 minutes and 39 seconds. No, talk for 2. Talk for 2 and hope that you get interrupted with a question, right?
To pick up what you're saying, it's about human connection.
Exactly.
It's totally about human connection. When you're pitching to an agent, it's, first off, it shouldn't be, let me grab you in an elevator. It should be in a circumstance where they don't feel cornered. Because if they're cornered, they ain't gonna listen to anything you say. You know, like, oh, I gotta go. No, you know, I know you like this thing, but no, it needs to be, you know, I love what you said, you like your shirt. Start a conversation. Hello, how you doing? I hear you work for Gross and Dunlap. Yeah, really. Are they looking for mysteries this month? Or something that connects you to them, or like, dude, I saw you at the Doctor Who panel. You like Doctor Who too? That's pretty cool. You know, actually, I know you might be looking for pitches. Would you be interested to hear just a really short one after you've talked and made a connection? Because you don't want to literally hit them with it. You want to offer them to grab for it. You want to give them the chance to say, oh, that sounds interesting. Tell you what, later on, I'll meet you at the bar. I'll chat then. Or, I'm going to do a panel tomorrow at 6. Why don't you hang around after the panel and I'll chat with you for a minute.
Well, here's the great thing about that too. If you have a conversation, you get a conversation going. Because here's the thing about a pitch. When you think, I'm going to pitch to everybody. Well, okay, so I've got a middle grade book that I'm pitching. If I find somebody in an elevator and I start pitching, I just pitch, boom, go right at them, like, you know, right out of the gate. I might be pitching to somebody that does, you know, adult thrillers. That's their whole thing, is supernatural thrillers. I'm pitching a kid's book. And they might be very kind and nice, because they're generally kind and nice. And they're going to say, that's very nice, but I don't handle that. Well, now from a business perspective, I've wasted both their time and mine.
Yep.
In a quick conversation, I can qualify whether or not they're even interested and offer it up. If not, then we just had a nice conversation.
Well, the other thing is that human connection. When you talk to an agent or an editor or an assistant editor or whatever, they may not be the person you're pitching to. You may not have something they want, but it's a really small world. You're going to run into them 2 conventions from now, and maybe you will have something that they want, and maybe they will now be in the young adult division. So it's about creating a human connection that can be ongoing, because we are not isolated cubicle creatures.
No, and they talk to each other. You don't want them saying, so I got this Michael Ventrella. He's pitching his book. What do you think? And the other lady goes, wait, Michael Ventrella? No. He trapped me in an elevator and tore my ear off about some stupid book that I didn't want. Don't go near him.
Yep.
Right? And suddenly Michael, who thought he did a great pitch in the elevator, was really great with, you know, and she smiled, was nice to him and everything, and walked out, and she thought to himself, I am never signing that guy, and I'll make sure nobody else does.
And the reverse is true, because you can chat with someone, mention that you do this certain kind of thing without necessarily pitching them. Yeah, I write some young adult stuff. Really, and they chat a little bit and they hear about it. You know, Tony at such and such is looking for young adult stuff. Right. Why don't you give him a call? Tell him I sent you.
Right, and there you go. Now you have an entree.
I mean, in Hollywood, it's done on the golf course. Right. You know, and here it's done, unfortunately, because I don't drink, it's done in the bar. It's done in the hallway. It's done when you come out of a panel. The trick is to be comfortable and believe in your own stuff.
And professional, right? You want to come across as someone who's going to realize this is a business, and come across as someone who can be responsible, and you can make your deadlines and all the other things that are important.
I want to step back in just a little bit when we were talking about presentation. I've been going to science fiction conventions since the early 70s. I
So
have one.
that was when science was really young then. They just invented things, right?
It was alchemy when I was going. Quartz was a current technology. And if there's always a line between fan and professional. And while in science fiction conventions, that line is often a little more fluid than it is at, say, a mystery convention or a horror convention, there's a sense that you have to present yourself. You have to first be groomed. Some people don't think about that. They come out in the outfit they wear around the house. You have to be, if you're going to be outrageous, be stylishly outrageous so it's clear this is a decision and not just a result of the fact that you're off your meds. You must really be someone that someone wants to talk to, that someone wants to spend time with.
And that's, I think, you know, when Michael says professional, I think professional is one of those, you know, the thing I think to remember too is we're talking about basic business here. When we talk about a pitch, when we talk about connecting to somebody before you try to pitch something, that's simple networking. That's networking like I taught as a consultant to other consultants, right? So the fact is, that's all that is. It's being smart and recognizing that the connection comes before the pitch, right? And I think it's important. So when you think professional, it's a very slippery word, right? Because people think, well, what's professional in one thing and not professional there? But I'm an artist. What does that mean? I'm a writer. What does that mean? What it means is, and I think you're hitting on it, Teel, is you're not, you're workable. You can work with this person, right? Yeah, they may be a little eccentric, but they're stable.
And that what's nice is that eccentricity can work for you.
Right.
If it's a comfortable eccentricity, you know, if it's an interesting eccentricity, you know, I'm going to go there, but, you know, don't tell him because you'll hurt me. Somebody like Jonathan Mayberry has a thing. He's now recognized that a lot of people see him in Hawaiian shirts, and it's kind of a comfortable, fun thing. It's not alien to who he is, but for certain conventions and certain gatherings, he cultivates that. It becomes an interesting thing. You have a look. I remember L. Sprague de Camp, who was Lord Darcy. He would wear cloaks in the 70s and 80s. He would wear cloaks to conventions along with his three-piece suit. He was very Edwardian. And yet he was never ostracized for it. In fact, it became sort of a trademark, and he sort of encouraged it. I think everyone has something that is uniquely them, but it's not, when someone sees you, they don't want to look like they've just found you in the back of your garage after you've repaired your tractor. They want to see, this is somebody that I could sit and have a conversation with, and that might be interesting because, oh, wow, that's a really interesting earring, or that's a cool hat, or something that is you, but is you in a comfortable way to
So
people.
the question I would have is, if we're going to back up a little bit now and say, okay, we got it. We need to go in, we need to, I have to figure out what my objective is. So, okay, my objective is to connect. My objective is not to seem bonkers. My objective is to be stable and to be excited about my own work, as you point out, Teel, and that's a good thing, but not so excited that I try to pin somebody down and talk to them for 20 minutes about my world building, right? So,
that's the writer and editor can't work with.
Right, exactly. And so you want that stability thing. So now let's talk about, you're talking about getting, Jonathan with his shirts, absolutely, with his Hawaiian shirts, that sort of thing. How do you find that kind of thing for each one of us? So Michael has asked the question about, when you're just starting out, how do you start to discover what are the parts of you that work for your brand? Because really it's about a brand. It's about who you are. You're the brand. So, for example, I don't think there's anybody that doesn't know at this point, that knows me or has bumped into me, that doesn't know that I'm an actor. They all know I'm an actor, because that's one of the leading things I use always, because let's face it, it infuses everything I do. So as a result, when I started to think about this, I thought, well, I'm not going to be some sort of scholarly author. I can't pull that off. I'm an actor. I'm not particularly, for a writer, I'm not particularly well read. I've read, but a lot of writers have read a lot more than me, right? So you got to pick those things. So I would ask the folks here, if you were to ask somebody, for example, just go by clothing, like, what is it that you remember about me? Is there anything about the way I dress that you remember from year to year? Be interesting to hear what kind of responses you get.
Well,
You
I
know?
have a photo from when I used to be, every headshot I ever take, this is every headshot I had taken over a 20-year period, whether I was in a suit or not, I was holding a sword off camera. Because the only time I ever felt comfortable was with a sword in my hand. Now, I studied martial art that used to refer to the arms and legs as the sword, and I internalized it. But I had a photo of me from one of the very early conventions where I was doing a sword lecture, and it was standing up there, and somebody snapped it, you know, without me knowing. And I used to look at that picture and go, I want to be that guy. Now, it was me. I had done it, but I didn't internalize who that guy was until a long time after I could realize. And the reason is I was comfortable in that moment because I was comfortable in myself.
Right.
And
Right.
I was not projecting a fake version of me. I was maybe projecting a perfected version of me. But I recognized that I had to be comfortable with me or no one else was going to be comfortable. So I think that finding that look for you is what your friends will say when they think of you. Oh yeah,
Right.
you always wear these kind of shirts, or you're always well dressed, or your hair's always really, you know, something that sticks with them that you can then go, okay, you know, I am comfortable in that. So let me hold on to that as the thing I do.
You know, Michael, you can mute us.
You guys are the easiest people to interview I've ever had. I just sit back and listen. But one of the things that everyone wants to talk about, we talk about that pitch and the elevator pitch, and I know you hate the term elevator pitch, but the key is you've got to somehow find a way to take your story and narrow it down to a sentence, less than a sentence.
Yeah.
That's the hardest thing for anyone to do. I hate doing
Right.
that too.
Right.
You know, because when people want to hear it's, you know, Star Wars meets Harry Potter, you know, they want to see something very
right.
quickly they can put in their mind. I hate those kind of things because after a while you go, oh yeah, sure it is. But there's got to be a way to take your story and pitch it down because that's what people want, isn't it?
Well, I think, you know, what you're referring to is a slug line in essence.
Yeah, I mean, if you're at a table and
If
people
you're
are
at
walking by, and go, what's
right.
your book about? You've got to be able to say it in a few sentences or a few
But
words.
I think what happens is we've gotten what you referred to as that was the Hollywood pitch that you're talking about. The
Yes.
classic Hollywood pitch. It's it's this meets that, and you've got this, right? And peel it back, peel a Hollywood pitch back. Say, okay, what does that do for somebody? Well, in a sentence, what that does is that does a couple of things. The first thing it does, by using two things that are common that people recognize, the person that you're speaking to goes, I know Star Wars, I know the Wizard of Oz, okay. And when you say, well, it's like the two of them meet, now I go, okay, so it's a story that has elements from science fiction and from fantasy, okay, and things that I know. And then you add something else in there. So like, for example, when I introduced myself and I introduced Dashiell Hamlet, I said, it's a detective novel meets Shakespeare for middle grade. If I were to say that to an agent, the agent's going to go, oh, okay, tell me more. Because now it's enough for them to go, okay, this is a middle grade novel. It's a detective novel, so I know what kind of novel it is, and it has something to do with Shakespeare. Okay, that's enough information that if they're interested, they'll say, huh, what do you mean? If they're not, they'll say, oh, that sounds interesting. And you're done. So I think in terms of thinking of that line, Michael, I think it's really about trying to say, okay, at the very core of what my book is, not hyping it. You're not hyping. This is not a hype. This is let me just tell you what it is real quick in case maybe you want to talk about it. And that's really all it is, right? I think people get in trouble when they hype it big, you know, and make it this huge, you know.
This is the greatest story ever written. Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, no, you can't do that.
Everyone I've written is one of those.
Oh, of course, all of us.
I think too that you have to look at what is the element in the story that would make you want to read it, and then turn around. You know, like say, okay, I have a story that is a detective story that involves Shakespearean themes. Why would I want to read it? Well, I love that, Well, why would I want to read it? Well, actually, I would like it at this grade level because that I'm comfortable reading that.
Right.
And so if you try to look at what you've written and say, if someone else wrote this, why would I pick it up? Why, I'm picking it up because I wrote it and I know what's going to happen and all that. So actually, I usually don't until I get to the end of the book. But if somebody else wrote this story, what would be the thing about it that would appeal to me?
Right.
Well, what's your pitch for your latest book? You got a steampunk book.
Yes.
What's it about? Quickly, what is it?
Okay. It's an 1890s world where magic is part of the science of every culture, and therefore the Aztecs stopped colonization at the Atlantic, and the Aztec Empire and the British Empire and the Mali Empire are fighting for control of the world. And we see this through a British nobleman visiting America.
Keith, was that too long? What do you think of that?
Depends. It depends upon the situation. Here's the thing.
Yeah.
That is not a single line slug line. That's a nice summary slug line, not a slug, a summary
World
sentence.
summary, really, yeah.
It's really a nice summary. And I would say if you knew that, for example, if you were sitting down at a pitch fest type of thing where you knew that you were pitching to an agent and that was great, you're great. Because I know, Teel, you would have, by this point, you would have had conversation with the person. See,
Yes.
if you networking, you're conversing, you're chatting with the person, you're going back and forth, and they say something that leads into that, right? Then you're armed with something that now tells me what I need to know. Because here's the great thing about what he just said. Now I have questions, right? See, now I have questions. I go,
my lead
so
line
is he a noble? So is.
For my lead line for the synopsis is, would you go to hell for the one you love?
Right, which is
That's
that line is the one that sort of pulls is designed to, it's a question. It's a great thing to use a question like that because the person goes, I don't know, would I? Maybe. And then you have a sense of what the story is about, which is really nice. But again, you go back to the networking thing. If you've established enough of a conversation, then that line is workable. I'll give you an example. At the Right Stuff conference about 4 years ago, I was there as a speaker. My one history book had come out and I was signing books, right? I come into the big place where all the people for the thing were there, and who's sitting next to me? Donald Moss.
I was there.
Right, you were there.
I was there.
I sit next to Donald. I sit next to Don. I'm sitting over here. We strike up a conversation about kids because he had just adopted his son at that point, and my kids were still young, and we were going, well, not that young. They were, I had kids. And so we're talking about kids and raising children. That sort of. We chatted for a while. We signed a whole bunch of books. And then we started chatting as we were cleaning up again about kids and family and travel and blah, 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 blah. As he's putting his boxes away, he looks at me and goes, so what are you working on? And there's your opening.
Yeah, exactly.
But that took an hour, right?
It's always about human connection.
And that's when that line that Teel has is better. Because at that point, my little quick line about it's a detective novel meets Shakespeare for middle grade is not enough. See, now I got to have a little bit more there so that way he can say something. And when I said it to him, what it was, in the same sort of sentence that Teel had, he said, huh.
I guess what I'm thinking about is I've gone to conventions and things, and I've seen people sitting at tables, and I say, "What's your book about?" And they start talking, and it goes on and on and on, and I want the quick ones,
the one,
very very short one, and then if that interests me, then I want Teel's version. You see what I mean?
Right. And see, and the thing is, you want to be careful not to get to the point where, because pay attention to your audience. If you start going into a pitch and you start talking, if somebody like Michael says, "What's your book about?" and looks interested, and you start going into this long dissertation, it was a dark, stormy night.
Yeah.
And off you go down onto the races, and you see their eyes glazing over, and you see them sort of looking to escape. Pick up on the cues.
Yeah.
Know the audience, and you got to be aware of the fact that that's not the question he asked. He asked what's the story about. He didn't ask for a synopsis.
Right.
Different, right?
And that's the skill.
That was not the pitch levels really go from one sentence to one paragraph to tell me a little about the story, and you really have to gauge where it is. I mean, if it's going to be Harry Potter meets this, that's the real quick throw. You
Right.
have to be able to like go further. But it's always about getting them to ask a question. So it has to be a little mysterious. And one of the things, I took a really interesting seminar on doing synopses, and they talked about the fact, on pitches actually, and it talked about the fact that don't tell the story in the specifics, but give us the flavor, because they want the specifics they'll ask for in a full synopsis. Right. They just want to know what the temperature of it is.
Well, and they'll ask you questions. You give them the temperature, and then they ask a question about specifics. This is a great thing. This is like an audition. I go into an audition. If I get a director that says, that was a nice read, listen, do this for me. If I'm being directed in an audition, I've just made it to another level.
Yep, that's the next level of Dante's Inferno.
Exactly right. Exactly. I'm next circle of hell. Here I come.
The lawyers are just up there.
But if you do that, if you put out sort of the flavor of the thing, and they say to you, well, so how in the hell does this English guy get over to Mexico in the first place? Well, now you got a little bit more of a conversation. You've got an entree to do what Michael didn't want you to do, because he didn't give you that entree. He just said, what's your story about?
Yeah.
Right? It's paying attention and knowing the audience and recognizing that matching the answer and the response to the question. Right?
How is it different when nowadays everything's being done on Zoom? You think there's a difference with not having the actual personal touch? Marianne was asking about that, you know?
I pitched to an agent a month ago at the Quills conference. I did 3 little pitch sessions, Zoomy pitch sessions, on my old crappy computer. And they still listen to me. And I actually enjoyed it much more than the last time I pitched to an agent in a room at a convention, because I was in my den. I had a chance to prepare myself. I didn't have to worry about distractions of other people in the room. And they were in their home in a comfortable place.
Right.
And even if I was a crazy, I couldn't get to them. So they had a level of comfort that this giant goon stepping into a room with them might have taken away from them. Right. And it was a very good experience, and they asked for the book. I had same day I pitched to someone else, and it wasn't quite right for them, but we had a very nice conversation. And Keith was very right. I think I had 5 minutes or 8, whatever it was. My pitch was 2 minutes.
Perfect.
But there was 30 seconds of chat before, complimenting the bookcase behind, or, I forget, just connecting with them as a person. I gave them my little pitch, and then they asked questions. And it was a very nice experience, because it was really low pressure. Because, right. If I got off it and I had been rejected, I could scream and cry all I wanted here. I didn't have to walk out of the room not looking like I was a loser to the other people in the line getting ready.
Well, I do think this is just a different medium. This is just a different platform. It's a venue. When I talk about public speaking and talk about presentation skills, there's venue is one of the factors you always have to take into account. So what's the venue? Is it are you in an elevator? Are you doing a pitch fest? Are you just at the bar doing bar fest? What is it you're doing? What situation is it? That venue changes how the conversation goes, right? And so this is the same thing. To Teel's point, there's a safety factor here, which is kind of nice, right? If I am a lunatic, all you got to do is mute me. Now I'm just screaming in my own box, and eventually I'll go away. And in fact, you can throw me out if you want, and you don't have to deal with me. I'm not going to come banging back at the door or anything like that. So there's now a level of safety, which is kind of nice, which is great. What's taken away a little bit and it depends on how you tick, right? I'm good in a room. I like being in a room. It's my skill set. It's what I do for a living, So for me, something is lost. But I've also worked a lot in front of a camera, so this just feels like working in front of a camera, so this is fine too.
Also, I think while you lose the intimacy of physically being there, you actually gain the intimacy of being able to be more comfortable with opening up a little, because you're both in your comfortable space.
Right.
So it is a trade-off. It is definitely a trade-off, and I would certainly prefer to be there for real. But I think actually one of the things that this damn panic will have done for all of us is that this is now going to be part of the regular reality. Right. I think more agents are going to be comfortable pitching and accepting pitches rather this way than they will at conferences. There's no travel expenses.
Right.
They, like I said, you don't have to worry about crazies. You don't have to worry about being pigeonholed in an elevator. You
Right.
can't get an elevator pitch if it's a Zoom pitch, you know?
Exactly. Well, and let me tell you, one of the things, what I do for a living, one of the things I do for a living is I do simulation training. So I go in and I play big high-end customers, CEOs, CFOs, you know,
Yeah.
VPs like that, that mostly it's been bankers over the years, but it's been manufacturing, it's been everything. I'm generally on site for 3 days in a hotel with a group of people that are trying to sell me something. Let me tell you what it's like to be pitched to dust by people who are like out of their minds and desperate to make sure that you say yes to them. It reads, you can see it, you can feel it, you can smell it. The desperation is not something you want. You don't want it. Because here's the thing. If I go into a pitch session with an agent, I'll never lose. You know why? Because my objective is not to get my book picked up by that agent. My objective is to network with the agent, make a connection with the agent, get my story out there and see if they're interested. If they are, great. Then we'll talk about that. If they're not, okay, that's fine. I'll ask them a few questions about what they do and what they enjoy and that kind of stuff. And maybe if they were comfortable enough, I might even say, do you know anybody interested in this line? Do you have anybody in your agency or somebody, you know, maybe I'll make a connection that way. Even if that doesn't work, we'll leave and they'll think to themselves, what a nice guy. He's easy to talk to. He's not down my throat. I like him. I've won.
I go back to the first time I worked on a soap opera. It was because I was auditioning for something else, and the agent heard my audition through a door and asked for my resume after I'd left because he liked my voice. And the same is true for when you're pitching. It goes back to even dating. Nobody wants to date somebody who's desperate. No. And if, like I said, if you believe in your material, then you know that maybe not this time, but the next time someone's going to take it because it's good. I know it's good. I've worked hard on it. And
well, I think, and that's to your point. And I very often go back to the audition model because, of course, I've auditioned a lot in my life. Obviously, you have too. One of the things that makes it easy to audition at this point in my career, in fact, it was very early on that I figured this out, which made my career much happier. And that is when you're told no at an audition, when an agent rejects your book, it is rarely about your talent. It is rarely about that. You can write the book. If you got it this far, you're writing, you know, if you've vetted it correctly and it's been edited and people have looked at it and you've really done your due diligence, that book is ready to go. It's a good book, right? 9 times out of 10, if they don't want it, it's just simply because it doesn't work for them. It doesn't fit for them. They can't sell this kind of stuff. They don't know somebody who can sell this kind of stuff. In an audition, honestly, half the time it's just for look. It's whatever. You know, the first time I was a producer, I did a piece for a corporate group, and I had 2 actresses that were. The first actress was tremendous. The second actress was very good. The client, I kept pushing the first actress that she was just looking at me. I don't know. I said, all right, what's going on? Why don't you like her? I think she's terrific. She says, she reminds me of my cousin, and I hate my cousin. Yep. That was that. She didn't get the job because the client hated her cousin.
I had a publisher that I sent a book to, really liked the book, and he said, unfortunately, it's a little similar to something I'm working on. But then he said, what else you got? And that book is coming out in November. You know, so it really is often, circumstances may have nothing to do with you. It's they've just moved out of that market segment, or they just bought a book that also has giant monkeys in it, so they don't want a second giant monkey book.
We talked about that when we talked about editing anthologies and how sometimes I've had to reject stories, not because they weren't good, but because they just didn't fit. You know, and it doesn't mean you're bad. And so accepting rejection has got to be part of any creative field, I would think, you know, and realizing that it's not necessarily having to do with how good your work is.
Well, it's we make a connection. I think the problem is what we do is in our brain, we make a connection with rejection connected to failure. Mm-hmm. And then failure is this, failure is that. We're failures, right? Well, in truth, failure is not, and I posted something on Facebook about this. I saw a speaker talk about grit on one of the TED Talks. Failure is not a permanent situation. Failure is simply a movement along the journey. If the book doesn't go here, that's not a failure. It didn't go here, right? And I think that's why I get so about pitch, this idea of pitching. I would rather you call it, I'm going to go to a convention and I'm going to have a conversation with lots of people. I can do that. I can do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of them might be interested in, repping my book. Many of them won't, right?
Well,
so the elevator pitch is an elevator conversation.
Yeah, I think in fact, and I talked about this, we talked on Sunday a little bit about this, is that from the moment I step out of the cab or the car, the moment I walk up to the hotel, I am in presenting mode. I'm presenting the author that is really me, but is a little more professional than me and is open to what comes. That the old story about, you're trapped in an elevator with a guy for 5 hours, but you get out and you run into him again the next day, and it turns out he's the head of the company, and you didn't know that, but you guys were talking baseball the whole time.
Right.
But you've made a connection. Everyone you meet is someone, and whether they are a colleague, because no matter what level writer they are a colleague, or a commercial connection, which is in a way its own colleague. They're all connected. They're still people. And everyone has a reason to be there. And if your reason to be there is to just let people see you and maybe share your child with them, this world you've created, then you'll always have a good experience at the conference. You'll always walk away feeling good. And if you were lucky to actually talk to an editor, whether they took it or not, you'll see that editor again. And 2 years down the line or 5 years down the line, that editor will remember your name when they see it on a manuscript that comes through their desk, or you will run into them. I think, Michael, you talked at one of the anthologies about, or one of you guys in the anthology thing, we're talking about somebody had a story at one anthology, it didn't work. And the next anthology coming up, they went, I remember a story from that. Or didn't you have a guy who, because the world is connected. Everyone knows someone else, and eventually you'll come around the circle and meet them again. So, be yourself, but be the best to yourself you can be.
I've certainly had writers who wrote really nice stories that didn't fit, and when I did another anthology, I said, would you submit to this anthology because I like your writing, even though your story didn't fit. Right. So yeah, you're right. Just because you fail once doesn't mean you're going to fail in the future.
And I think when you're talking about, again, it's a matter of perspective and shifting your perspective about what you're doing. So being rejected by someone for an anthology because your story didn't fit is not failure. That's simply a business thing that happened, right? Mm-hmm. I think at a con, thing to remember, if you're an author at a con, or you're like when I do workshops, from my perspective, I'm on stage at a con. The only time I'm not on stage is when I'm in my hotel room behind a locked door. Otherwise, I'm on stage. I'm someone that I'm not famous, but if someone bumps into me and talks to me and they see me being, a jerk with somebody, well, they're seeing that's imprinting. And now I'm up in front of the room and in their brain and thinking to themselves, oh, it's that jerk.
Yep.
And they get up and they leave.
Yep.
Right. You're on stage the whole time. And that's always the case, in public speaking. Say it again.
It's ripples in the pond.
Exactly right.
You can make good ripples or you can make bad ones.
And how does that apply to, I don't know if this is something you guys want to talk about, but someone's asking about social media presence, because that's also in a sense you're on stage, correct?
You have to be very careful on social media. Very, very careful. Mayberry talks about this all the time, and he's right. He's right. You have got to recognize that if you're going to be playing social media as your place for branding, as your place for connecting to your public, if you will, and let's put to rest the I'm not famous thing. Forget it. Every one of us has a certain level. If you're a writer and you're an author and you've been in the business and you've been banging around these cons, even if you haven't got anything published, you are starting to become a public person, which means you have a public persona, which means that you need that to be consistent, right? And so social media is one of those places where you can't go on some rant on social media. You can't do that,
I don't know. If you see
Well,
my
here's the
social
thing.
media, but that's
You can, Michael, in your case, you can because it's part of your brand,
exactly.
Yes, that's what I
right?
was going to say. Everybody knows I'm a complete psycho lefty nice guy. I will never put anyone down because I don't believe in that.
Right.
And I try to constantly reinforce positive things. I hate hypocrisy, so I'll hate hypocrisy on left, right, up, and down. But it comes to that whole thing you were saying before, Keith, about the author you create still has to be connected to the writer and the person you are. So it exaggerates your personality. But if you're a cantankerous, mean, nasty person, I mean, Harlan Ellison made a living out of being
That's
mean.
part of his. That was Harlan's brand, though.
Exactly. I mean, he did it before it was, before it was in. But he owned it.
Yeah.
He didn't try to shy away from it. And not that I would go there, but if you are who you are, social media is just a larger version of you. It's just a bigger,
Right.
it's the shadow cast on the wall behind you in the cave. You
Well,
know,
and the scary thing about social media is it never goes away. You know, you do something, you say something, and it comes back to bite you years later. You know, and that's sort of the tricky part of it. I think the other piece of social media is accept the fact that you're going to make mistakes. You know, you got to accept the fact that you're human. You're going to say something that's going to piss somebody off, and they're going to remember it.
Yep.
And okay, well, you know, fall on your sword and say, I'm, that's for you, Teel, fall on your sword.
I've got a
And
variety. Which would you like?
you can have one. And accept the fact, and even say to the person, listen, if I offended, I apologize for offending.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to do that, you know.
We're running low of time, so are there any other
Are there any
major points you
questions?
want to make? And then what we're going to do is we're going to cut the recording, but we're going to stay here so there can be other questions.
For sure.
But are there any major points you want to make for our recording that we haven't made that you think should be important?
I think it's important to a conversation about presentation skills and pitching or creating conversations around your book or that kind of thing, or networking, all that kind of stuff. Conversation around it is great and that's good, and you want to think about it. But I can't recommend enough to get out there and actually do it. And if you can take a class or a workshop, I gave a workshop a while back, but lots of people give workshops for these things. There's all kinds of places to do public speaking and presentation skill stuff. Go and do it, because you know what? You get better at it. It's a skill. It's absolutely, you know this move right here the politicians do with their hand like this, right? Let me tell you where it came from. Because before that, they did this, right? You know where this came from? Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. That's where that came. Jack Kennedy did this. He's the one who started doing this. And every politician since Jack Kennedy does it because it's smart, because it's a smart thing to do. It is a learned thing. Public speaking, presentation is a learned skill. Is it harder for some? Yep, but it's still a learned skill. And be yourself. Don't be somebody else. If this persona you create, the professional you, it's still you. Because here's the key. Genuine is very intriguing. Genuine is always more interesting than put on. Unless it's a really nice wig.
Well, here, let me think. And I would say, first off, I did take Keith's, and Keith's seminar.
As did I years ago with Jonathan.
It's very much to the point. It makes cogent, logical sense. It will embrace people. But the thing I want to say is that having been in fandom and known so many fans, and many fans become writers. I think almost every writer at some point starts out as a fan of something and writes their version of it, or once, oh, I wish Captain Kirk had a monkey, and we would go in there. But I think you have to embrace the fact that if you love your material, then that came from you, so you're worthy of the material. You're worthy of getting it out there. Don't be afraid. Most people are afraid that nobody will like what they do, and that's not true. You like it, you count. If you can take that and translate it to find the other parts of you that connect to people, your work will always find a home. Just maybe not the first time. The Thornbirds was rejected 48 times. Harry Potter was picked up out of a trash can. But I believe in positive energy. If you believe in your work and you believe in yourself, that projects, and people like positivity.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Don't go away. We're gonna go offline. So everyone, thank you for watching, and see you in a couple weeks.